Om Apyayantu Mangani Vakpanashchakshushrotram Atho Abalam Indriyani Cha Sarvani Sarvam Brahma Upanishadam Maham Brahma Nirakoyam Mama Brahma Nirakaro Anirakarna Meyastu Anirakarna Meyastu Tadatmani Nirateya Upanishadsu Dharma Ste Mayi Santu Te Mayi Santu Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May all my limbs grow strong, so also my breath, my speech, eyes, ears, and all my organs. All is Brahman, of which the Upanishads speak. May I never turn away from Brahman. May Brahman never turn me away. Let there be no turning away at least on my side. I am engaged in the study of the self. The Upanishads speak of qualities that one must possess to succeed in such a study. May I acquire those qualities. Om, peace, peace, peace. So we've been studying, this is the Kena Upanishad. Back in ancient times in India, there were the sages, the rishis. And these were people who went out into the forest and they lived in hermitages, ashrams, and they spent their time in meditation and prayer. And through that, they discovered that there is a whole spiritual reality of which normally we're not aware of at all. But they actually experienced that thing, and so what they experienced then became the Upanishads. Now the Upanishads, they represent like the philosophical part of Hinduism, the spiritual part. The Vedas themselves, which is considered the main scripture in Hinduism, these were actually the mantras and prayers and chants and things that were used by the priests when they performed their ancient worships, called yagnas. But in the Upanishads, they contain the underlying spiritual knowledge behind all the rituals and everything else. And so these, the Upanishads, along with the Brahma Sutras and Bhagavad Gita, they form the basis of Hinduism. And so we're studying this Upanishad, a fairly short one. It's called the Kena Upanishad. And the word Kena in Sanskrit, it means by whom. And the basic idea in this Upanishad is by whose power do the eyes see, do the ears hear, does the tongue taste, and so forth. And so we finished the first two sections of the book, so we'll just read through that, what we've covered already, and then we'll come to a story, and then I'll tell you the story. So the disciple asked, by whose will is the mind drawn towards this object? Who makes the vital breath the first sign of life function? Ordained by whom do people utter words? Which God directs the eye, the ear, and the other organs? So this is what the student asks, is who causes all these things to happen? Who causes the eyes to see and the ears to hear, and so forth? And the teacher responds and said, It, Brahman, is the ear of the ear, the mind of the mind, the speech of the speech, the breath of the breath, and the eye of the eye. Therefore the wise, giving up the notion that they are associated with these organs, depart from this world and become immortal. So that was the question, is who causes all these things to happen? And the answer was that it's Brahman or God, who was ultimately making everything happen. I might mention here that when they talk of Brahman, they're talking about the source of the whole universe, all of creation. but also they refer to it as Atman or as the self, because that very Brahman, that very divine being who created everything, that very self is within each person. And in truth, each person is that divine being, but we don't know it. And this is our whole problem. We think we're just the ears or the eyes or the body, and not realizing that deeper than that, there is this deeper divine presence, infinite presence. And this was, in the ancient times, these were the three great truths that the ancient sages discovered. First of all, they discovered that man is this immortal, all-powerful, kind of wonderful divine being in truth. And secondly, they discovered that behind the whole universe, there's one divine, infinite being. And they saw that this, when they thought of this being as the self within the individual, they called it the Atman, which means self. It's who we really are. And when they talked about it as the creator, the source of the whole universe, they called it Brahman. But actually they're one and the same. And the other thing they discovered, the third truth, was that there's a unity of things. We think we're all separate from everybody, that each one of us is an isolated individual and we don't really know anybody else. But when you go deeper, you discover that everybody is an expression of that one consciousness. And that's what they mean by Brahman. So it says, the eye does not reach there, nor does speech nor the mind. We do not know how a teacher can possibly explain it to a disciple. We do not know. That Brahman is different from all known, familiar objects. It is beyond even unknown objects. This is what we heard from the ancient ones, who explained it to us. Know that alone to be Brahman, which cannot be described by speech, and by which speech becomes a vehicle of expression. It, Brahman, is not this sense world that people worship. Know that alone to be Brahman, which one cannot see by the eyes, and by the power of which the eyes see. It, Brahman, is not this sense world that people worship. Know that alone to be Brahman, which one cannot hear by the organ of hearing, and by the power of which the ear can hear. It, Brahman, is not this sense world that people worship. Know that alone to be Brahman, which one cannot make an object of smelling by the nose, and by the power of which the nose smells or functions. It, Brahman, is not this sense world that people worship. And this is the end of the first section of the Kena Upanishad. So in order to understand these teachings, basically what they tell you is who we really are. And the idea is that we have a body, and this body, it has eyes that see things, it has ears that hear things, nose that smells things. And we also have a mind which looks at things and says, oh, I understand this, or I know this, and like that. Now, both this physical body, which we have, and the mind, which thinks and knows things, both of these are actually instruments that are used by the real self. And this body is like a car. You get in your car, and then you can drive around, and you can go see different places and do all kinds of things. And in the same way, through this body, we're able to be in the world. And we're able to experience things and do things and learn things and basically have fun. And so, but all the time, we're actually not the body or the mind, we're like the driver in the car. The driver uses the car, but he's something different. Now, our problem as human beings is that we don't know that. We become so absorbed or attached to the body, and like that we think, well, this is what I am. And then, if we fall down and break our leg, we say, oh, I'm in pain. but actually the real you is just an immortal child of God. You're always with God, you're always perfectly fine with all the glory of God within you, but you don't know that. And so it's like a king, a prince. He's born in a palace. His father's a king, his mother's a queen. But then he develops amnesia. He forgets who he is, and then he's out wandering around the streets, begging, for money and things, and all the time he should be back in the palace. And this is sort of the human condition that the ancient sages tried to explain to us. That if you know who you really are, you'll find everything is perfect, everything is wonderful. So now we come to section 2, and again we'll just read through it again. And this section was kind of a little difficult, but we'll go through it and then we'll come to the story. So if you think, I know Brahman well, then it is for certain that you know little about the nature of Brahman. You know only its manifestations in the individual self, the gods, and the phenomenal world. Therefore, Brahman should be thoroughly investigated. The disciple, the student says, I think it is known. He says, I do not think that I know it, Brahman, well, neither is it that I do not know, nor can I say I know. He who among us disciples knows the meaning of the expression, neither is it that I do not know, nor can I say I know, he knows that Brahman. He who says he does not know Brahman knows it. He who says he knows does not know it. It is known to those who say they do not know it. It is not known to those who say they know it. So, when one attains Brahman at all levels of one's consciousness, one attains true knowledge, and one goes beyond life and death. By self-knowledge, one attains strength. By true knowledge, one attains immortality. If one knows the self as Brahman in this very life, one then knows the supreme truth. Without this knowledge, one is doomed to much suffering. But the wise person who knows this truth, that Brahman is in all things and all beings, he withdraws from this world and becomes free. So that brought us to the end of the second section. All these verses about, he who knows Brahman knows not, and he who thinks he knows doesn't know, he knows. What it's trying to explain is that Brahman, and the term of knowing Brahman, isn't something that you can get out of a book. You can be a great scholar. You can read Sanskrit, you can know all the scriptures, everything, but it doesn't mean you know Brahman. The only way you can know Brahman is to be Brahman, or to let Brahman be you. And that's what they mean, is that there's a famous story in Zen Buddhism, that once there was a professor of philosophy, very learned. He knew all the books, all the scriptures, everything. But he decided he wanted to learn about Zen. And so he went to a Zen master. And then the Zen master said, first of all right, let's have a cup of tea. So the Zen master then began pouring tea into his cup, and he kept pouring and pouring. And pretty soon the tea was going out on the table and on the floor and everything. And the professor, he began to shout and say, what are you doing? Can't you see that the cup's full? And then the Zen master said, in the same way your mind is so full of your own knowledge that there's no room for Zen. You think you know so much that there's no room for actually knowing what Brahman is. And so this is the idea, is that it's something that you can only know when it reveals itself from within you. It's not something that somebody else can tell you or that you can get from a book. That only gives you ideas about Brahman. And normally we think of ideas as knowledge. We think when we read a book we get knowledge. But the real knowledge is when you become something. In other words, you say, okay, I know somebody. I know my brother, I know my mother, and so forth. But actually, in order to truly know someone else, you actually have to be that person. You know, the American Indians have an expression that you have to walk for a mile in their shoes. In order to really understand why a person does what he does or behaves the way he does, you have to kind of be in his position. And so Brahman is like that kind of knowledge that you can't know just as kind of out of a book, but you actually have to experience it. Now then we come to the story that I told you about. This is in section 3. And this is the story of Swami Varadananda, who I knew he was back in Hyde Park in Chicago. When I first came, he was the Swami here. And he used to tell this story quite often. So the Upanishad introduces a story here so that we may understand the real nature of Brahman. We see the manifestation of power, but what is the source of this power? It is Brahman. Brahman is the source of all power that exists in this world. The story given in this section illustrates this point. So once there was a war between the gods and demons. The gods won and became conceited, thinking that the victory was due to their own strength. In reality, however, it was due to Brahman. They did not know this, so Brahman wanted to curb their pride. As the gods were congratulating each other on their victory, a strange figure appeared before them. They did not know who it was. First they asked Agni, the god of fire, to go and find out the identity of this figure, so Agni went. As he approached the figure, the latter asked, "Who are you?" Agni said, "I am Agni. What can you do?" he asked, and Agni replied, "I can burn everything." And then the figure, the mysterious figure, he placed a straw on the ground before Agni and he said, "Burn it." Agni tried again and again, but he could not burn it. Ashamed, he returned to the other gods. He said, "I tried to find out who that being is," he said, "but I couldn't." Next the gods said, "Vayu, the god of wind." The figure asked him, "Who are you?" And Vayu replied, "I am Vayu." "What can you do?" said the figure. Vayu answered, "I can blow everything away." The figure then gave him the same piece of straw, saying, "All right, blow away this straw." So Vayu tried again and again, but the straw would not budge. He also came back ashamed. So finally Indra, the ruler of the gods, he went to find out who this figure was. But before he could approach it, it disappeared. And in its place stood a beautiful goddess, adorned with many ornaments. She was Uma Himavati. Indra asked her who the strange figure was, and Uma told him that it was Brahman. She also told him that they had won the war because of Brahman. Indra understood that the gods owed everything to Brahman, and that they had no power of their own. The gods and goddesses and all the powers that exist come from one source, and that is Brahman. So this is the kind of the basic summary of the story, and then we'll go through the verses of it. But this is the idea is that in Indian mythology, the gods and the demons are always fighting. And sometimes the demons get on top, you know, and sometimes the gods get on top. And like that, it's always, conflict is always going on. And in this case, the gods won. And so they were all very proud about their victory. And oh, we beat the demons. And thinking that it was because of their own strength and their own power that they had been able to defeat the demons. And this is what Brahman did. He appeared as this mysterious figure in order to teach them that all the power in the universe, actually it comes from God. It comes from Brahman. We only think it's ours. And then we take hold of it and say, oh, I did this because I'm so smart, because I'm so strong, because I'm so much better than everybody else. And like that, we develop this sense of ego, thinking that all my intelligence and education, everything is due to how wonderful I am, not realizing that there's a source that's bringing all of this to us. It's like we're all connected to what they call the tree of life. It's like there's one vast consciousness there. There's one vast being, reality there. And each of us, as we connect to that being, then it's like a branch connected to the tree. Now all the sap, all the life force of the tree, it comes into the branch and it sustains it and it keeps it alive and makes it blossom and produce fruit and all. But when the sense of ego comes, that, oh, I'm so important, I'm so good, yeah, then it's like we cut the branch off from the tree. And now, instead of all the sap making the tree blossom and produce fruit and all, slowly everything begins to dry up. And eventually there's no fruit or bloom or anything else. And so it's this sense of ego that we shut God out. We say, oh, don't bother me, I'm busy here, I'm doing all this, I'm acquiring all this. And so then God lets us do that. It's like Sri Ramakrishna he told a story. Now in this world, we're all like children, and we're all playing a game. And he said the Divine Mother, she looks on, and she said, oh, the children are happy with their game, and so she leaves us alone. And some of us are trying to make money, some of us are trying to get fame, some of us are trying to get one thing or another. And the mother says, okay, go ahead and play. But when one of the children actually wants the mother, actually begins to cry to the mother, then the mother comes and she takes care of the child. And that connection that is made again between us and the kind of the divine source of our being, and again we begin to blossom and give real fruit. So this was a lesson that Brahma taught the gods, and the gods, like Indra, Agni, Vayu, they were actually all individual souls. They were all people. But because they were so good, because they acquired so much good karma, that they ended up in the position of gods. So it's like a bureaucracy almost, that Agni is there, the god of fire is always there, but different souls may hold that position from time to time. And so one Indra comes, but then when his good karma is all used up, he comes back to earth again. And then some other soul will come and be Agni for a while. And like that, as souls, we have this whole universe, this whole vast kind of playground to do all kinds of things in, to be all kinds of, to be a king in one life, be a poor person in another, and be a god in another. Like that, through all kinds of experiences, we are like God's children running around playing. But eventually, somebody begins to ask, well, who made me? What's behind all this? What's the kind of meaning of life? And they begin then to search. Instead of just playing, they begin to wonder, well, what's the truth? And so that begins then the search to get reunited with God, to become aware again of who we are and of what God is. So this is a story, and now we'll go through the actual verses, which tell us the same basic story. So verse 1, it says, it was Brahman who won the war for the gods. It was his, Brahman's victory, in which the gods took pride. They thought, this victory is ours indeed. The credit is ours indeed. And then the commentary says that the gods won the war because of the power they derived from Brahman, but they thought that they had won through their own power. They felt pride of their victory and began to say that the credit was theirs. So Brahman, of course, became aware of that false pride of the gods and appeared before them for their benefit. Seeing that divine form, the gods did not know what it was. And the commentary explains, that this story illustrates how the ego stands as a hurdle on the path to supreme knowledge. Even the gods are not freed from this ego, and because they have this ego, they are subject to the limitations that ignorance imposes on an individual. Their positions as gods are only temporary rewards that they have earned due to their exceptionally good karma. When this karma runs out, however, they lose their positions. As gods, they possess some additional powers and qualities, but otherwise they are like ordinary mortals. Until and unless they realize their identity with Brahman, they are as bound as any other being. So then the gods said to Agni, the god of fire, said, O Jataveda, that's the name of Agni, O Jataveda, the all-knowing God, find out who this divine being is. And Agni replied, this will be done. So the gods were puzzled by the strange figure before them. He was Brahman, but they did not know that. Brahman is formless and cannot have any form, but for the sake of the story, it is supposed that he has assumed the form. So then Agni, he went to the divine being, who said, who are you? Agni replied, I am Agni, fire, no less than that. I am Jataveda, the knower of all creatures, indeed. The divine being asks, what power is there in you? You as such an important person? And Agni replied, I can burn all of this, indeed whatever there is in the world. And it mentions that Agni was boastful about his power, completely oblivious to the fact that he owed his power to Brahman. And then the divine figure placed a straw before him, saying, burn it. Agni rushed forward and applied all his power, but he failed to burn it. He left the figure and said to the gods, I fail to find out who this divine being is. So then the gods said to Vayu, wind, he said, O Vayu, find out clearly who this divine being is. And Vayu replied, this will be done. Vayu went to the divine being who said, who are you? And Vayu replied, I am Vayu. No less than that. I am Matarishva, the one who moves in space, indeed. So the divine being asked, what power is there in you? You, such an important person. And Vayu replied, says, I can blow away all this. Indeed, whatever there is in the world. The divine figure placed a straw before him, saying, blow it away. Vayu rushed forward and applied all his power, but he failed to blow it away. He left the figure and said to the gods, I failed to find out who this divine being is. So then the gods said to Indra, the king of the gods, he said, O Maghava, find out clearly who this divine being is. And Indra replied, this will be done. But when Indra approached the divine being, it disappeared. So in the sky, where the divine figure had been, there was a woman wearing many ornaments. It was Uma Haimavati. He came to her and said, who was that divine being? And commentary says that Uma Haimavati, according to mythology, is the daughter of the Himalayas. She is the embodiment of self-knowledge. And so she tells Indra, says, it was Brahman. She said, it was indeed Brahman's victory which made you feel so elated. From that, Indra came to know that the divine being was Brahman. Because the gods, Agni, Vayu, and Indra, came in intimate contact with Brahman, and they were the first to know Brahman, they excelled all other gods. And commentary says that here, the reference is not to physical touch, it is a reference to their moral and spiritual refinement, which enabled Agni, Vayu, and Indra to come face to face with Brahman. It was as if they had touched Brahman. Indra was the chief of the gods, and as gods, Agni and Vayu were also prominent in the hierarchy. Obviously, they occupied such positions by virtue of their spiritual qualities. Now they had an added advantage in that they came to have some understanding about the nature of Brahman from Umahangavati. It is no wonder then that they excelled the other gods. And then the verse 3 says that because Indra came in intimate contact with Brahman, and he was the first to identify it, the divine figure, as Brahman, he excelled the other gods. And the commentary says it was to Indra that Uma Haimavati revealed the identity of the divine being, because he was the first to know Brahman and understand that Brahman was the source of all power. He surpassed all of the other gods. So this is a story about the gods and how they won their victory and became very vain and proud of their accomplishments. And so then Brahman came and he showed them that it was only through his power and his power alone that they had won the victory. When he withdrew the power, even Agni, who was the god of fire, it couldn't burn a single little straw. In the same way, Vayu, who was the god of wind, he couldn't blow away a single little straw. Because it's only when the power of Brahman was there that they could accomplish anything. And so that was the lesson behind the story, is that when we accomplish something, when we achieve something, we tend to become proud about it. We tend to say, oh, yeah, I did this, and I accomplished this, and I did that. But we have to realize that there's something deeper which supplies all the power that enables us to do things. And remember that it's possible to actually connect ourselves to that power. And so that it can begin to kind of flow into us, like the sap into the branch of the tree, and then you see how well your life blossoms and what kind of fruits are produced. As an ego, as this individual says, oh, I'm just this person here, I'm just this human being, and I may consider myself very beautiful and very intelligent and everything else, but I'm still, just a human being. Well, as a human being, we have a certain degree of power. We can accomplish things, and we can accomplish good things. We can also accomplish bad things. And like that, we go through life. But what we can accomplish is actually very limited, very small, compared to what can be accomplished. And when a person begins to wonder, well, where does the power come that makes me alive? Where does the power come that enables me to see things, or to understand things, and hear things? Where is the source of that power? When a person begins to wonder that, and basically, when a person begins to ask the question, who am I? We think, oh, I'm just so-and-so. But then we start to think, well, who am I really? Am I my big toe? Is that me? Am I my little finger? Is that me? And like that, if you start to examine yourself, you begin to wonder, well, who is me really? And that question of who am I, eventually leads you to the discovery that you're really the child of God, and He's there with you. And that becomes a part of your life based on making a connection with that divine presence. Without that presence, without that higher consciousness, you're just able to do what you as a human being can do. But when you add that additional presence, which is always there with you, if we become aware of it, when you add that as your friend or your companion, now your life becomes completely different. And you begin to actually express to be able to do the things that we were trying to do. Sri Ramakrishna used to tell a story that in India they had a game. In America they have similar games called Sari. In India it might be called Parcheesi or something. But anyway, the idea of the game is that the player has his pieces. He starts out at the home base, and he has to go all the way around the board until he gets to the final goal, the home. Now, as he's going around the board, if the other player lands on his square, his piece gets sent all the way back to the beginning and has to start over again. But if he has two of his pieces together on a square, then the piece can't be sent back. Nobody can stop it. And so Sri Krishna said it was like that. When a person has, devotion to God, when he has the kind of a friendship with God, then he becomes like that player that has two pieces instead of one, and now nothing can defeat him. Nothing can cast him down or send him back to the start. And simply when you know who you are, and when you begin to understand to some extent what kind of treasure is there within you, then you begin to get transformed. But it's important to remember that the God we're talking about, or Brahman, he's not somebody way far off in heaven somewhere or something like that. He's actually there within your own self. And it's your own true self. And this is what Swami Vivekananda, particularly what he came to teach in the world. He said, he told his brother Monk Bappa, he said, I want to go to every corner of the universe and reveal to men their own divinity, because they don't know it. They have it. We always have it, but we don't know it. And so this was Swami Vivekananda's message and his mission, was to reveal to everybody that you have this wonderful treasure inside you. And you're not just a very small human being going through all kinds of problems and difficulties. You're a wonderful kind of child of God. So it's a little bit like if you have a treasure buried in your backyard, say a pirate treasure, chest full of gems and things that are worth $1 million. Now that treasure is buried in your backyard. It belongs to you. Theoretically, yes, it belongs to you. But if you don't know it's there, it doesn't do you any good at all. You may be living in poverty, not able to pay the rent, not able to buy food. All the time, this treasure's there, but because you don't know it's there, you can't use it at all. It's of no practical use for you, although, in theory, it is yours. It's in your yard, it belongs to you, and you're theoretically, you're very rich. So the first thing is, you have to learn that there is a treasure there. Suppose you find a pirate's map, or somebody says, oh, this is where the treasures are on the X. This is where the treasure is. Now, you say, oh yeah, now you have some sense. Oh yes, I do have something wonderful there. I do have a treasure there. But it still doesn't do you any good. The next thing is that then you've got to get a shovel. And then you have to start to dig, and eventually, then you uncover the treasure, and now it's yours. Now you're very rich. Now you can buy anything you want. You have all the treasure is yours, and you know it's yours. So like that, we first have to hear about from teachers like these ancient rishis in India, or for modern teachers like Swami Vivekananda. Somebody has to tell you that there's something wonderful inside of you. And after we hear that, it's not enough. Just say, oh yeah, that's right, I believe in that. Now you have to get a shovel and dig it up. And this is what all the meditation and pujas and things like that, all the different kind of spiritual practices that people do are really just trying to dig up that treasure, trying to remove all the dirt and thing that's covering it, all the barriers to it, so that in time they can actually possess it. They can actually own it, and then they get the benefit of it. And this is what the Upanishads are saying. This Kena Upanishad particularly is telling us that remember that whatever you do, whatever kind of powers the body has, whatever powers the mind has, all these things, remember that the source of all those things is from Brahman, or from God. And as you remember that in addition to my personal self, my individual self, my individual abilities and talents, there's all the wisdom, all the power, all the goodness in the world is actually there. If only I can remove the barriers and so that it can come in. And then when a person does that, then he's called a realized soul or a knower Brahman or something. Then he knows what he is, and then he finds that the source of all this universe, that he's actually one with that source. That's his real nature. That all the beings in this universe, he's actually one with all those beings. And so instead of being a small individual cut off from everything else, he becomes becomes one with everything. And in the process, finds kind of more and more wonderful gems and treasures begin to open up as the person follows it. So this is again Upanishad, which we've been studying, and a fairly short Upanishad, not very long. So even though the scriptures talk about Brahman and things like that, which can be kind of hard to understand, is just realize that Brahman's responsible for everything. All the beings, all the creatures, all the planets, all the stars, everything's come out of that Brahman. So even though we can't really understand what it is, you know it's something pretty big and pretty kind of worthwhile. And that whole thing is all actually somewhere deep inside your own self. So any questions on any of that? You're fortunate you came on the one night when we had a story to tell. So it's a little more interesting than usual. Okay, any questions? Okay. So, let me see, on Sunday, Swami Varadananda, he'll do the regular Sunday service on how we meditate, or why we should meditate. I just barely made it to this class. I've been attending trustee meeting for the Parliament of Religions. They're getting ready to hold another Parliament of Religions in Salt Lake City in October of 2015. So anyway, also all these next 3 days I'm involved in the meetings. And I'm thinking nothing else particularly is coming up anytime soon. I think our next puja is going to be Holy Mother's puja on December 13th. So I think the rest of the month is going to be kind of normal and quiet. But also, Swami is planning to suspend the Tuesday and Friday classes on starting December 15th. So we've only got about 3 more weeks to go with this class, and then it'll be suspended up until like April, in other words, for winter break. But the Sunday class will still go on. All the other activities, pujas, everything like that, those things will still go on. Om Asato Ma Sadgamya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamya Mrityurmam Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. O Lord, lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness to light, and lead us from death to immortality. Oh, peace, peace, peace.